Today I want to talk to you about 6 perilous sins. Sins that can gradually ruin your life, your relationships, and your eternity. These are not just minor missteps, they are snares that can drag you further and further from God. And if you fail to recognize them, they will consume everything you have. Sin number 1, pride. The sin that blinds. Pride was the very first sin ever committed. Long before sin entered the world, before Adam and Eve defied God in the garden, pride was already at work in the heavens. The Bible tells us that Lucifer, once a magnificent angel, was expelled from heaven because of his pride. He was not content with serving God. He desired to be equal to him. His heart became exalted, and he convinced himself that he was greater than he truly was. That same spirit of pride has been deceiving humanity ever since, pulling people away from God and leading them toward destruction. Pride is blinding because it distorts perception. A person overtaken by pride cannot see themselves as they really are. They fail to recognize their flaws, overlook their transgressions, and justify their actions, believing they are always in the right. Pride prevents people from admitting their need for God because it makes them believe they can manage life on their own. It causes them to rely on their own understanding rather than seeking God's wisdom. It makes them disregard correction and resist transformation because they assume they already possess all the answers. Pride hardens the heart. It makes a person resistant to truth even when that truth is evident. The Pharisees in the Bible were blinded by their own self-righteousness. They thought they were holy, that they had everything figured out, that they knew God better than anyone else. But when the Son of God stood before them, they rejected him. Their pride prevented them from recognizing the truth. It made them blind to the salvation that was right in front of them. This is what pride does. It makes a person unwilling to admit their faults, unwilling to humble themselves, unwilling to change. Pride is also deceptive because it takes many different forms. Some people assume that pride only appears as arrogance, boasting, showing off, thinking they are superior to others. But pride can also be concealed in subtle ways. It can manifest as self-reliance, the idea that you do not need anyone's help. It can appear as perfectionism, the refusal to acknowledge failure or weakness. It can even take the form of false humility, where a person outwardly appears modest but secretly craves recognition and admiration. Pride is not always loud and obvious. Sometimes it is quiet and masked. One of the most dangerous consequences of pride is that it inevitably leads to a downfall. The Bible cautions, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. A person overtaken by pride may seem to thrive for a while, but eventually their arrogance will bring about their downfall. History is filled with accounts of kings, rulers, and leaders who met ruin because they allowed pride to consume them. They disregarded warnings, dismissed wise advice, and believed they were untouchable until their fall came. Pride blinds individuals to their own flaws. And when they least anticipate it, those weaknesses are laid bare. Pride also damages relationships. It causes division because a prideful individual refuses to apologize, refuses to extend forgiveness, and refuses to acknowledge their faults. Pride sparks conflicts in marriages, families, friendships, and workplaces. It makes people defensive, unwilling to listen, and quick to shift blame. A heart filled with pride is more focused on being right than on being at peace. It values reputation over restoration. It prioritizes control over connection. This is why pride remains one of the biggest barriers to love, unity, and healing. Pride not only distances people from each other, it also distances them from God. The Bible states that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Someone consumed by pride cannot receive God's grace because they do not recognize their need for it. They place confidence in their own strength rather than trusting in Him. They attempt to rescue themselves rather than surrendering to the only one who can truly save them. This is why pride is so perilous. It keeps people from repentance. It prevents them from turning to God. It blinds them to their need for salvation. Pride also deprives a person of their true calling. God has a purpose and a plan for every life, but pride keeps individuals from stepping into it. It makes them obstinate, unwilling to obey, unwilling to yield. It convinces them that their way is superior to God's way. But pride never results in true satisfaction. It may bring temporary success, but it always leads to disappointment. No amount of accomplishments, no level of wealth, no degree of recognition can fulfill the soul if pride holds control. Pride promises greatness, but ultimately brings destruction. Sin number 2, greed, the insatiable desire. Greed is a craving that is never appeased. It is a hunger that only intensifies the more it is indulged, a longing that takes over the heart and clouds the soul. Greed is not limited to money. It extends to power, possessions, status, and influence. It is a condition of the heart that convinces a person that they never have enough, that they always require more, that whatever they possess will never truly bring them contentment. But greed is deceptive. It guarantees satisfaction, yet it only leads to emptiness. It assures security, but instead it breeds anxiety. It promises happiness, but in reality, it results in despair. Greed is deceptive because it often begins subtly. It starts with a simple longing, a little more wealth, a little more comfort, a little more recognition. There is nothing inherently wrong with wanting to enhance one's life, with working diligently, or with striving for success. But greed twists that ambition into an obsession. It whispers, just a little more, and you'll finally be happy. Just a little more, and you'll feel secure. Just a little more, and you'll be fulfilled. Yet no matter how much a person acquires, the craving never ceases. What once felt sufficient quickly becomes inadequate. The individual who once aspired to own a modest home now dreams of a grand estate. The one who once sought a stable career now desires to be the wealthiest in the room. The person who once wished for recognition now hungers for dominance over others. Greed fuels itself, growing stronger with every achievement. Greed is dangerous because it blinds people to what truly holds value. Someone overtaken by greed begins to view everything and everyone as a stepping stone to their goals. Relationships become transactional. Time with loved ones is sacrificed for more business, more profit, more success. Principles and morals become flexible, adjusted to whatever path leads to greater gain. A person consumed by greed will justify deception, manipulation, and even betrayal if it serves their ambitions. They will abandon their integrity for a bit more fortune. They will compromise their values for a little more power. They will disregard the needs of others because their own desires dominate their hearts. History is filled with examples of people destroyed by greed. Kings and rulers who had everything yet craved more, only to lose it all in the end. Entrepreneurs who built vast empires but sacrificed their souls in the process. Families torn apart over inheritance disputes. Friendships shattered by conflicts over money. Greed does not only harm the one enslaved by it, it also inflicts suffering on those around them. It erodes trust. It shatters relationships. It transforms love into rivalry, loyalty into betrayal. The Bible warns that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It does not claim that money itself is wicked. Money is simply a tool, neither inherently good nor bad. But the obsession with wealth, the relentless pursuit of more, that is where the true danger lies. A person consumed by the love of money will stop at nothing to obtain it. They will deceive, cheat, steal, and manipulate. They will exploit the vulnerable, oppress the needy, and turn a blind eye to the suffering of others if it means increasing their fortune. They will live as they please and act as they wish so long as their wealth continues to grow. Greed hardens the heart, making a person numb to the struggles of others. It convinces them that their success is all that matters, that their personal gain outweighs justice, compassion, and mercy. Greed also fosters anxiety and fear. The person who is never content is also never truly at peace. They are always pursuing, always striving, always terrified of losing what they have acquired. They cannot fully enjoy their wealth because they are too preoccupied with accumulating more. They cannot find rest because their mind is constantly occupied with the next opportunity, the next transaction, the next investment. Their thoughts are dominated by the pursuit of gain, and their heart is weighed down by the fear of loss. They place their trust in riches for security, but wealth is never guaranteed. Markets collapse, businesses go under, money loses its worth, and everything a person has worked tirelessly to obtain can vanish in an instant. Yet greed deceives them into believing that they must keep chasing, keep striving, keep convincing themselves that just a little more will finally be enough. Greed is not limited to money. It manifests in many different ways. It can be greed for authority, for recognition, for influence. It can be greed for attention, for control, for dominance. It can be greed for material things, always craving the newest, the finest, the most luxurious. It can be greed for pleasure, constantly seeking the next thrill, the next sensation, the next indulgence. It can be greed for validation, needing constant praise, never feeling truly appreciated unless they are being admired. Regardless of the form it takes, greed always leads to the same destination: emptiness. A greedy person is never genuinely happy because they are fixated on what they lack rather than valuing what they already possess. They are never completely satisfied because no matter how much they obtain, it is never enough. They are never truly free because they are bound by their own desires. They are never at peace because their heart remains restless, constantly yearning, perpetually hungry for more. Sin number 3, lust. The hidden destroyer. Lust is a hidden destroyer. Unlike anger or pride, it does not make a loud entrance. Unlike greed or envy, it does not always come with clear warning signs. Instead, it slips quietly into the heart, whispers into the mind, and takes hold before a person even realizes it. It begins as a fleeting thought, a lingering glance, a seemingly innocent desire, but once it finds its way in, it spreads like wildfire, consuming everything in its wake. What starts as a minor temptation can evolve into an obsession, an addiction, a destructive force that shatters lives, marriages, families, and even souls. Lust is deceptive because it disguises itself as love, passion, or longing. It tricks a person into believing that what they are pursuing will satisfy them, that what they crave will make them whole. It promises pleasure, excitement, and escape, but ultimately it brings sorrow, remorse, and devastation. Lust does not create true connection, it destroys it. It does not bring genuine love, it corrupts it. It does not fulfill, it leaves a person emptier than before. The world glorifies lust, disguising it as liberation, as empowerment, as a form of self-expression. But what society labels as harmless pleasure often results in deep emotional wounds, broken trust, and lives weighed down by regret. Lust is dangerous because it reshapes the mind. What once seemed immoral starts to feel acceptable. What once triggered guilt begins to feel normal. The more a person indulges in lust, the stronger its grip becomes. It fosters an insatiable craving, a hunger that is never truly satisfied. One glance is never enough. One experience does not suffice. One indulgence never fulfills. Lust continues to lure, to demand more, to drag a person further down a path they never intended to take. Lust tears apart marriages. It causes a husband to look at another woman instead of cherishing his wife. It makes a wife compare her husband to an illusion that does not exist. It deceives people into thinking that what they have is insufficient, that something greater is out there, that love should always feel exhilarating, like an endless thrill. But real love is not built on fleeting desire. It is built on devotion, sacrifice, and selflessness. Lust offers none of these. Instead, it leads to betrayal, adultery, and fractured families. It turns sacred commitments into temporary indulgences. It replaces deep affection with shallow attraction. Lust does not only impact relationships, it corrupts the soul. It alters the way a person perceives others. Instead of seeing people as individuals with worth, with purpose, with souls, lust reduces them to mere objects. It strips away dignity, replacing respect with selfish intent. Lust does not care about the heart. It only seeks the body. It does not value the person. It only craves the pleasure. And once it has taken what it desires, it moves on, leaving behind emptiness, guilt, and shame. Lust also fuels addiction. What starts as curiosity can quickly become captivity. It grips a person's mind, making them seek more, crave more, need more. Lust enslaves. It robs a person of self-control, making it nearly impossible to stop, even when they recognize the destruction it brings. It clouds judgment, leading people into situations they never imagined they would face. It results in secret behaviors, hidden struggles, and double lives. It creates guilt that lingers, a relentless cycle of indulgence followed by regret. The deeper a person sinks into lust, the harder it becomes to break free. Lust does not only affect individuals, it corrupts entire civilizations. It diminishes the value of marriage, fractures families, and erodes moral foundations. It transforms what is sacred into something trivial, what is pure into something tainted. It teaches people that love is merely about emotions and that commitment is optional. It spreads through media, entertainment, and culture, making acceptable what was once unthinkable. It encourages people to chase instant pleasure, to prioritize desire over responsibility, to seek satisfaction in things that can never truly fulfill. Lust also blinds people to the repercussions of their choices. It deceives them into believing that no one will find out, that no harm is done, that it is merely a private issue. But lust always carries consequences. It results in broken hearts, tarnished reputations, unforeseen outcomes, and profound regret. It takes a person farther than they ever intended to go. What starts as a moment of indulgence can end in complete ruin. What begins as a minor compromise can lead to utter destruction. Lust may appear harmless at first, but it always comes with a price. Sin number 4, envy, the poison of the soul. Envy is a toxin that gradually eats away at the soul. It does not arrive with loud declarations or sudden fits of rage. Instead, it sneaks into the heart like a whisper, sowing seeds of bitterness, resentment, and dissatisfaction. It makes a person focus on the blessings of others while feeling discontent with their own. It replaces gratitude with comparison, joy with jealousy, and peace with a restless craving for what belongs to someone else. Envy does not merely make a person want more, it makes them resent those who already have it. It is not just about desiring success, wealth, or happiness. It is the deep, corrosive bitterness that someone else possesses what they do not. Envy distorts perception. It convinces a person that others have an easier path, that life is unfair, that they have been denied what they rightfully deserve. It makes them feel as if their own blessings are small, insignificant, and unworthy of appreciation. A person consumed by envy is never content because their focus is always on someone else's life. They cannot enjoy their own victories because they are too preoccupied comparing them to others. They cannot celebrate the success of others because it feels like a personal loss. Even when they reach their own goals, envy robs them of joy, whispering that someone else still has more, still has better, still possesses something they lack. Envy has been the root of countless betrayals, conflicts, and tragedies throughout history. It was envy that led Cain to take the life of his brother Abel. Cain was not angry because he lacked everything. He was furious because Abel's offering was accepted while his was rejected. Instead of seeking to change himself, instead of reflecting on his own shortcomings, he let envy fester into hatred, and hatred escalate into murder. The first recorded act of violence in human history was driven by envy, and it has continued ever since. Envy does not only affect individuals, it infects entire societies. It breeds division, turning people against one another. It makes individuals resent those who have more instead of feeling inspired to strive for improvement. It fosters a culture of rivalry instead of collaboration, causing people to perceive success as a scarce resource, as if one person's victory means another's defeat. It destroys friendships, transforming admiration into jealousy. It poisons workplaces, leading colleagues to undermine each other rather than offer support. It even seeps into families, creating conflicts between siblings, straining relationships between parents and children, and driving wedges between spouses. Envy blinds people to their own talents and strengths. It makes them ignore their own potential because they are too fixated on what someone else possesses. Instead of developing their abilities, they waste their time resenting those who have already achieved success. They fail to recognize the dedication, sacrifices, and hardships behind another person's accomplishments. All they see is the outcome, and it fills them with bitterness. But envy does not inspire, it weakens. It does not encourage, it exhausts. Does not push a person forward, it keeps them stagnant, trapped in a cycle of resentment and self-pity. Envy breeds ingratitude. A person consumed by envy cannot recognize the blessings in their own life because they are too fixated on counting the blessings of others. They overlook what they have, always believing that something different, something extra, something beyond their grasp would finally bring them fulfillment. Yet envy is never satisfied. It is an appetite that only grows stronger the more it is indulged. The more a person compares, the more inadequate they feel. The more they focus on others, the less they appreciate their own worth. Envy keeps a person in a continuous state of dissatisfaction, blinding them to the goodness that is already in their grasp. Envy also leads to profound misery. A person controlled by envy is never truly at peace. Their thoughts are constantly preoccupied with others, what they own, what they accomplish, how they live. Instead of enjoying life, they dwell in frustration and resentment. They start to feel hostility toward people who have done them no harm. They withdraw from those they once admired. They create imaginary competitions, striving against people who are completely unaware of the so-called contest. Envy isolates. It makes a person resentful toward others and deeply unhappy within themselves. Envy, if not confronted, can transform into hatred. It begins as quiet jealousy, but over time it festers, growing into resentment and bitterness. It leads a person to secretly hope for the downfall of others, wishing that their achievements are short-lived. It fuels a dark longing to see others fail, just to feel a sense of satisfaction. But no one who harbors envy ever truly wins. Even if the person they envy loses everything, they will still not feel fulfilled. Envy is a thief. It robs a person of joy, peace, gratitude, and contentment. It does not merely damage relationships, it slowly destroys the one who carries it. Sin number 5, anger, the fire that consumes. Anger is a fire that devours everything in its path. It begins as a spark, small, seemingly insignificant, but if not controlled, it spreads, becoming hotter, stronger, and increasingly uncontrollable. It burns through logic, through relationships, through inner peace, leaving destruction in its wake. Unlike other sins that creep in unnoticed, anger often bursts forth with intensity, revealing itself in shouted words, clenched fists, slammed doors. But even when anger is silent, when it remains hidden beneath the surface, it still smolders, it lingers in the heart, polluting thoughts, filling the mind with bitterness, waiting for the right moment to ignite. Anger is dangerous because it blinds. A person consumed by rage cannot see clearly. They fail to recognize the harm they inflict, the pain they cause, the bridges they are burning. They speak recklessly, act without thinking, and destroy without considering the cost. Anger makes people say things they can never take back. It causes them to lash out at those they cherish. It makes them hold grudges long after the situation has passed. It magnifies small offenses into major conflicts. It distorts perception, making a person believe they are justified, that their wrath is righteous, that they have every reason to be engulfed by fury. But anger rarely leads to justice. It only leads to... Anger does not just wound others. It consumes the one who holds onto it. It fills the heart with tension, with unrest, with bitterness. A person dominated by anger cannot experience peace. Even when they are not outwardly expressing their rage, their mind remains in turmoil. They relive past offenses repeatedly, fueling their resentment, clinging to their pain. They justify their bitterness, refusing to forgive, unwilling to release the past. But anger is a prison. It shackles a person to past wounds, keeping them trapped in a cycle of hurt and retaliation. The longer anger is held, the heavier it becomes, until it takes control, shaping thoughts, emotions, and actions. Some anger erupts suddenly, flaring up in an instant, triggered by an offense, a harsh word, an injustice. It ignites like fire set to dry grass, raging fiercely before eventually burning out. But other anger is slow burning. It simmers beneath the surface, growing in intensity over time. It is the lingering anger of betrayal, of shattered trust, of wounds that never truly healed. This type of anger is especially dangerous because it is not always visible. It hides behind forced smiles, beneath quiet resentment, beneath bitterness disguised as indifference. Yet it remains, shaping a person's thoughts, their words, and the way they live. Anger can also be inherited. A person raised in a household filled with rage often carries it forward. They learn to react to life with hostility, to handle conflicts with aggression, to view love as a battleground. They bear the burden of past generations, repeating the same destructive cycles, causing the same devastation. Anger fuels more anger. Wounded people wound others. Those who have been hurt often go on to hurt those around them. And unless the cycle is broken, it continues, spreading through families, friendships, and entire lifetimes. Anger is also deceptive. It makes a person feel powerful, justified, in control. In the heat of the moment, anger provides a false sense of authority, a surge of energy, an illusion of superiority. But that power is a lie. Anger does not bring triumph, it brings remorse. It does not make a person stronger, it makes them reckless. It does not prove righteousness, it reveals a lack of discipline. Many have destroyed their own lives in a single moment of uncontrolled anger. Words spoken in rage have ended marriages, shattered friendships, and damaged reputations. Actions taken in fury have led to violence, to loss, to consequences that can never be undone. Anger also poisons relationships. It creates barriers between people, turning minor disagreements into lifelong resentments. It makes a person unwilling to listen, unwilling to compromise, unwilling to forgive. It replaces love with hostility, peace with discord, unity with division. A person ruled by anger struggles to maintain meaningful relationships because their temper drives others away. They become difficult to be around, unpredictable, exhausting. Friends begin to distance themselves. Family members tread carefully around them. Love becomes strained. And in the end, anger leaves them alone, isolated by the fire they refuse to extinguish. Uncontrolled anger does not only affect the one experiencing it, it spreads to everyone nearby. It alters the atmosphere of a home, turning it from a refuge of peace into a space filled with tension. It impacts workplaces, making them toxic, filled with hostility and resentment. It seeps into communities, fueling violence, division, and hatred. The world is covered in the aftermath of anger. Wars fought over pride, relationships destroyed over petty offenses, lives lost in moments of uncontrolled rage. Anger, when left unchecked, does not just consume the one who holds it, it sets everything around them ablaze. Sin number 6, sloth, the quiet thief of destiny. Sloth is the quiet thief of destiny. Unlike other sins that reveal themselves through action, sloth is defined by inaction. It is not as explosive as anger or as self-glorifying as pride. It does not strike with force like greed or burn with intensity like lust. Instead, it creeps in unnoticed, masking itself as relaxation, as rest, as a justification to delay until another day. But one day turns into a week, a month, a year, and before a person realizes it, sloth has stolen their purpose, their potential, and their calling. Sloth is not just simple laziness. It is a deeper indifference, a spiritual and mental disengagement that makes a person unwilling to strive, to improve, to take ownership of their life. It is not merely a refusal to work hard, but a refusal to care, a surrender to idleness, an avoidance of effort. It convinces a person that doing nothing is safer than trying and failing, that staying in comfort is better than stepping into uncertainty, that waiting is better than acting. It makes people believe that their aspirations, their dreams, their divine calling can always wait. But the reality is time does not wait. Life moves forward, whether or not those who hesitate choose to move with it. Sloth drains ambition. It whispers that there will always be time later, that there is no urgency, that effort is exhausting and unnecessary. It persuades people to postpone responsibilities, to neglect their talents, to squander the days they have been given. But days turn into years, and wasted years lead to regret. A person overcome by sloth looks back on their life and sees missed opportunities, abandoned aspirations, talents left undeveloped, and goals never pursued. They realize too late that time cannot be reclaimed, that the moments they wasted might have been the very moments that could have changed everything. Sloth also steals discipline. It makes simple tasks feel like burdens, turns small responsibilities into overwhelming obstacles. It keeps people from pushing through hardship, from embracing discomfort, from building the endurance necessary for growth. Success in any area, career, relationships, personal development, requires dedication, consistency, and perseverance. But sloth refuses to pay the cost. It seeks shortcuts, easy escapes, paths that demand no sacrifice, and in the end it leads to nothing. A person trapped by sloth may dream of success, but without action, without determination, without effort, those dreams remain just that, dreams, never realities. Sloth does not only affect a person's external circumstances, it also impacts their inner world. It weakens the spirit, dulls the mind, and creates a void that no amount of entertainment, distraction, or fleeting pleasure can ever truly fill. A life without purpose, without action, without the pursuit of something greater, turns into a life of silent despair. Sloth deceives people into believing that inactivity will bring them peace, but instead it breeds frustration, restlessness, and dissatisfaction. The soul longs for direction, for significance, for progress, but sloth deprives it of these things, leaving a person feeling empty, aimless, and unfulfilled. Sloth is also an enemy of faith. It makes a person passive in their relationship with God, comfortable with drifting rather than seeking, content with stagnation instead of spiritual growth. It convinces people that prayer can wait, that reading scripture is not urgent, that developing their faith is something they can put off for another time. But faith that is not nurtured becomes weak. A relationship with God that is not actively pursued begins to fade. Sloth does not destroy faith in an instant. It wears it away gradually, making a person complacent, indifferent, spiritually asleep. It keeps them from stepping into their calling, from using their talents, from fulfilling the purpose God has designed for their life. Sloth also damages relationships. It makes people indifferent in their marriages, their friendships, their families. Love requires dedication, communication, and intentional effort. But sloth breeds complacency, making people unwilling to invest in those around them. It convinces them that relationships will take care of themselves, that they do not need to make an effort, that their loved ones will always be there regardless of how much they are neglected. But relationships that are not cared for begin to deteriorate. Distance grows, love fades, and by the time a person realizes what has happened, the damage is already done. Sloth also fuels excuses. A person trapped in sloth will always have a justification for why they cannot act, why they cannot change, why they cannot move forward. They will point to circumstances, to other people, to a lack of time, to a lack of energy, but beneath the surface, the real obstacle is fear. Fear of failure, fear of struggle, fear of stepping outside their comfort zone. Sloth is often a mask for deeper battles, for insecurities, for a lack of confidence in one's own ability to grow and succeed. Yet the only way to overcome it is through action, through pressing forward even when it is difficult, through doing what is necessary even without motivation, through refusing to let life slip away in endless hesitation. Sloth deceives people into believing that rest is the ultimate goal, that an easy life is the purpose, that comfort is the key to happiness. But true fulfillment does not come from avoiding effort. It comes from pursuing something meaningful. It comes from pushing past limitations, embracing responsibility, and living with passion and intention. A life surrendered to sloth is a life only half-lived. It is a life of wasted gifts, of unrealized potential, of lingering regret. The greatest enemy of destiny is not failure, not hardship, not opposition. It is inaction. It is waiting for the perfect moment instead of stepping out in faith. It is assuming that there will always be another day instead of seizing the opportunities of today. There is a path that leads to life, And there is a path that leads to destruction. The sins that take root in a person's heart, pride, greed, lust, envy, anger, and sloth, are not merely flaws or mistakes. They are forces that work silently, persistently, pulling a person away from their calling, their purpose, and their relationship with God. They do not always bring immediate consequences. Often they operate in the shadows, taking control little by little until a person looks back and realizes just how far they have strayed. Pride blinds, making a person believe they need no wisdom, no correction, no humility. Greed enslaves, creating an endless hunger that can never be satisfied, leading a person to pursue wealth at the cost of their soul. Lust deceives, offering pleasure but bringing destruction, replacing love with selfish desire. Envy poisons, stealing joy and replacing it with bitterness, making a person resent the blessings of others. Anger consumes, turning small offenses into lifelong grudges, shattering relationships and inner peace. Sloth steals, not all at once, but gradually, robbing a person of their opportunities, their growth, their destiny. The most dangerous thing about these sins is not just the harm they cause, but how easily they can be excused, overlooked, or rationalized. They do not always seem destructive at first. Pride can feel like confidence. Greed can look like ambition. Lust can seem like passion. Envy can be mistaken for motivation. Anger can be justified as righteousness. Sloth can be disguised as rest. But over time, their true nature is revealed. And by the time a person realizes the destruction they have caused, much has already been lost. Yet no one is beyond redemption. No one is too far gone. The hold of sin may be strong, but grace is even stronger. The burden of past failures may feel overwhelming, but forgiveness is far greater. There is a path back from destruction, but it requires a decision to turn away from what leads to ruin and to walk toward what brings life. A decision to embrace humility, to surrender greed, to resist temptation, to release resentment, to master anger, to rise above complacency. A decision to pursue truth, to cultivate discipline, to live with intention. Life is too fleeting, too valuable to be spent in blindness, in selfish ambition, in bitterness, in stagnation. The time given is not meant to be wasted in regret, but to be lived with purpose, with fulfillment, with faith. The fight against these sins is not simple, but it is essential. And those who choose the right course, those who reject the destruction caused by pride, greed, lust, envy, anger, and sloth, will discover something far greater than anything sin could ever promise. They will find peace, they will find meaning, and most importantly, they will find life.